When Doug Ford was a Toronto City councillor, he and his brother, Mayor Rob Ford, waged a pitched battle against most of the city's elected representatives. Rob Ford's crack-smoking admission and other scandals led city councillors to strip him of much of his mayoral power. The Ford brothers often called for council to be cut in half. Today, as Premier, Ford is forcing the issue.
It is the most dysfunctional political arena in the country, City Hall. The reason it's so dysfunctional, we have 44 people trying to make a decision.
Doug Ford himself ran for mayor of Toronto and lost in 2014. The man who beat him, Mayor John Tory, is furious at Ford's surprise announcement.
What we don't need, and what I just can't support, is change being rammed down our throats without a single second of public consultation. And on top of that, done in the middle of the election period itself.
That municipal election is in just 3 months, leaving incumbents and hundreds of candidates unsure of where or if they will be running. The optics of Ford's move raise questions.
Smacks of peak when you try and meddle in the affairs of somebody who defeated you. And that's what's happening with John Tory, and I'm sure he's quite put out. And it doesn't, it's not a very good sign for the future relations between the City Hall in Toronto and the Ford government.
Ontario's opposition NDP leader questioned Ford's motives as well.
He is taking vengeance on his former political opponents. He's behaving in a very mean-spirited way, and his bullying approach to politics is odious.
Protesters showed up tonight outside Toronto City Hall, while inside, the council meeting descended into anger during the debate about the city's response.
Who knew about this in advance? Because it has been suggested that somebody knew about this in advance and didn't bring it to our attention.
Apologize to me and to this chamber for getting up and in that kind of that way where you're just kind of implying it but not saying it. Get up if you have the balls to do it and say it.
The mayor says he's considering the city's options, everything from a referendum to a court challenge. Ron Charles, CBC News, Toronto.
Now, this made waves beyond just Toronto. Calgary's mayor, not one to hold back, was pretty critical of Ford's timing and more.
For you to say to those folks who put their lives on hold only because they want to do public service, by the way, the job that you're running for doesn't exist anymore, that's unconscionable. And I stand with Mayor Tory on this and say that is a direct affront on democracy. That is tin pot dictator stuff.
The concern to democracy is about representation. Can 25 councillors properly represent a city of almost 3 million and growing? That means one councillor would represent about 112,000 constituents. The closest Canadian comparison we could find is actually Calgary, one councillor for every 84,000 people. And compare that to Montreal, which has 65 city council members. That's one for every 26,000 people. And that range perhaps is Ford's point, that it doesn't matter how many councillors a city has, good governance will overcome. And he points to Los Angeles as an example.
And when I told the city councillors in Los Angeles, we had 44 councillors and we had about 2.8 million people roughly, they looked at me like we had 3 heads.
Now, Ford is right about LA. It has 15 city councillors for a population of 4 million. That's one councillor per 265,000 residents. But is that more efficient, cost-effective? Well, that's where it gets a little complicated. A Los Angeles city councillor makes a little over $240,000 Canadian per year. A Toronto councillor makes less than half that, $112,000. And on average, LA councillors have 19 staff members who, of course, are paid and can help manage workload. Toronto, the average is 3 to 4 staff. Now, on the flip side to all of this, Ford and his supporters would say this is simply what he was elected to do, change things for Ontarians. And in less than a month on the job, he can point to quite a number of major policy changes. For starters, Ford's government struck a deal with Ontario's utility, Hydro One, which led to its CEO and board resigning. Ford is also phasing out Ontario's cap-and-trade program, which forced large companies to pay for carbon dioxide emissions. On the education front, Ford rolled back the sexual education curriculum to the old program, one that doesn't teach about consent, gender identity, or online safety. And just yesterday, media reports suggested he's going to allow private retailers to sell cannabis once it becomes legal. So look, things are moving quick, and there's very likely more to come. So let's get some insight on Ford's strategy from Ginny Roth. Ginny, you're a senior consultant at Crestview Strategy, a conservative strategist, and we should say your husband works for a current provincial minister. So Ginny, tell us, what should the public understand about how Doug Ford is operating here?
Well, he's moving quickly because he has a mandate to do so. The voters elected him to make change, and he's making a lot of change. And I think people are going to like it because he's got this single-minded focus on getting things done quickly and making sure that it's for the people. That was his mandate. That's his approach. That's what he's told all his cabinet, and that's the kind of lens that he's approaching all of his decision-making with.
But can you do it this quickly and still get it right?
I think you can, because he's got a mandate for it, and he's pretty dogged in saying if we don't see results on the ground, if people don't see their gas prices go down, if they don't see fewer politicians instead of more, if they don't see the size and cost of government going down, then we're not doing things right. And if they don't see it quickly, then they won't get the mandate that they asked for when they voted for us. So there could be some risks. You know, some of these cabinet ministers are new, they're learning on the job. But so long as you see this discipline, I think it's always worth leaning forward as he's doing and getting results.
So then set the table for us and look forward for us in terms of what you think might be coming down the pipe that perhaps may have as big of a splash as today's announcement.
Sure. So they've packed a lot in. They're repealing cap and trade. They're repealing sex ed. They're moving forward, and the big piece that's coming, I think, is financial. On the budget, on the fall economic statement, they've looked at the books. They have a commission that's looking into the size and cost of government, some of the rampant waste that we saw from the last government, and I don't think the report's going to be good, and that's going to mean that they're going to have to dig in and find those savings. But that's what they were elected for, and I think people are looking forward to it.
Okay, Ginny Roth with Crestview Strategy. Thanks very much for joining us.